This hearing-impaired woman's interpreter was arrested. What Judge Caprio decides at the end of this footage will shock you. The courtroom froze as the deaf woman signed, "Where is my interpreter?" And Judge Caprio learned the interpreter had been taken into custody the night before for interference after asserting that Marisol was protected under ADA law. Lisa Sogo stood at the defense table. Her eyes scanned the room, searching. Confusion washed over her face. She signed again, more urgently. No one answered. No one understood. Judge Frank Caprio looked up from the bench. He noticed the question in her body language. Even though he couldn't interpret the signs, he turned to the clerk. "Miss Curry, where is the interpreter?" Miss Curry checked the docket. Her voice carried uncertainty. "Your Honor, the interpreter is listed as unavailable." "The note says she's in custody." Caprio gently set down his pen, the kind of calm that meant everything was about to stop. "I in custody," he repeated. "The interpreter who is supposed to be here to give this woman access to her legal right to understand these proceedings is in jail." Miss Curry nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "The record shows she was arrested last night." Caprio removed his glasses. He closed them once, then placed them on the bench with the precision of someone who had just uncovered an injustice. "Why was she arrested?" Miss Curry read from the screen. "The charge is obstruction of a law enforcement officer." The courtroom went silent. Caprio leaned forward, his voice low and controlled, but firm underneath. "The interpreter who was supposed to ensure this defendant could communicate with police was arrested for obstruction while trying to help her communicate with police. No response. Marisol's hands moved again. She was asking questions no one could answer. Her frustration was visible. Her isolation was complete. Caprio looked at her, then at the gallery, then at Officer Roberto standing guard. "Before you see what happens next, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe to Judge Caprio. If you missed it, timestamp 9 hours, 45 minutes, 12 seconds, interpreter absent." Miss Curry straightened. Her tone was rigid, but uneasy. Case number 2025, County Route 4417, State vs. Marisol Sue. Charges include failure to comply with lawful orders, resisting arrest, careless driving, and failure to appear for a scheduled court date. Caprio raised his hand. The clerk stopped. He looked at Marisol and spoke slowly and clearly, even though he knew she couldn't hear him. "Miss Sue, can you hear me?" Marisol watched his lips. She shook her head and signed again, her movements precise and deliberate. Caprio turned to the clerk. "Does anyone in this courtroom know American Sign Language?" Silence. He turned to the prosecutor. "Does your office have an interpreter available?" The prosecutor hesitated. "Not immediately, Your Honor." Caprio's expression didn't change, but his voice softened and sharpened at the same time. "We cannot proceed until communication is equal. This is not optional." He turned back to Miss Curry. "Pull the arrest record for the interpreter. I need to know exactly why Lara West is in custody and why she is not here." Miss Curry typed quickly. Moments later she read aloud. "Interpreter Lara West was detained at approximately 8:47 p.m. last night following a traffic stop involving the defendant. Arresting officer Daniel Kim reports that Ms. West repeatedly refused orders to move away from the scene. She was booked for obstruction." Caprio's jaw tightened. "Move away from the scene," while translating for a deaf woman who was being detained. Miss Curry nodded. "That is what the report states. Interpreter held overnight. Reason, repeated requests." Caprio reviewed the file in silence. Then he looked up. "Let me understand this." Ms. Sue was stopped. She is profoundly deaf. She requested an interpreter. An interpreter arrived. That interpreter attempted to facilitate communication, and the officer arrested her for doing her job. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, the officer's report indicates." "I don't care what the report indicates," Caprio interrupted calmly. "I care what the law requires. And the law requires that a deaf individual be provided meaningful access to communication during any interaction with law enforcement. That is not courtesy. That is federal law under the Americans with Disabilities Act." He turned to Officer Roberto. "Bring Officer Kim into this courtroom immediately." Marisol's hands moved again. She was asking what was happening. Still, no one could answer her. The isolation deepened. Caprio looked at her gently. His voice lowered, though he knew she couldn't hear it. "Miss Sue, I will make sure you understand everything that happens here. That is my promise." He turned back to the clerk. "Call the jail. I want Lara West released immediately and brought here. I want the obstruction charge reviewed by the prosecutor's office within the hour. And I want a full report on why a licensed interpreter was arrested for interpreting." Miss Curry confirmed and picked up the phone. Caprio leaned back and reviewed the record again. He read the booking documents. He read the incident summary from the jail. The clerk read aloud from Lara West's written statement, now part of the public record while she remained behind bars. She stated that Marisol required ASL interpretation. She told deputies Marisol could not understand spoken commands. She explained that Marisol was reaching for a laminated card that read, "I am deaf in English and Spanish." She asked them to stop. She asked them to let her interpret. She asked them to follow the law. The deputies ordered her to stop interfering. One officer said her signing was escalating the situation. Another said she was causing a disturbance. A third told her to step back or be arrested. She did not step back. She kept signing. She kept interpreting. She kept insisting that Marisol had rights. And for that, she was arrested. Marisol spent the night in a holding cell, unable to communicate with anyone. She signed to the walls. She signed to officers. She signed to other inmates. No one understood. No one responded. She cried and signed and cried again. Record states, interpreter held overnight for repeated requests. The courtroom doors opened. Officer Daniel Kim entered. He was in his early 30s, wearing a uniform with a small notepad tucked in. He approached the witness stand. The clerk swore him in. Caprio's voice was calm and steady. Officer Kim, explain to the court what happened on the night of November 3 RD. Kim opened his notepad. His tone was controlled and professional. At approximately 8:21 p.m., I observed a vehicle traveling 48 miles per hour in a posted 35 zone. I initiated a traffic stop. The vehicle pulled over after about 2 blocks. I approached the driver's side. I identified myself and requested license and registration. He glanced down. The driver did not respond. I repeated the request. She still did not respond. I believed she was ignoring me. I raised my voice. She reached toward the dashboard compartment. I ordered her to stop and show her hands. She did not comply. I opened the door and attempted to restrain her. She pulled away. I radioed for backup. Caprio leaned forward slightly. Did the driver say anything to you? No, Your Honor. She was silent. Did she make any movements? Kim hesitated. She was waving her hands. Caprio repeated. In what way? I'm not sure. It looked like gestures, hand motions. Did it occur to you that she might be using sign language? Kim's face tightened. Not at that time, Your Honor. Caprio's voice stayed even. What happened next? A translator arrived. She said someone at the scene had called her. She approached the car and started making the same hand movements. I ordered her to step back. She refused. She said the driver was deaf and needed a translator. I told her I had to finish my investigation first. She said I could not question the driver without a translator. She kept insisting. She interfered with my commands, so I arrested her for obstruction. Caprio was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, quieter than before. Officer, if a person cannot hear your commands, non-compliance is not defiance. Kim looked down. I didn't know she was deaf until the translator told me. And when the translator told you, what did you do? I ordered her to step back so I could complete the stop. Did you request a translator through official channels? No, Your Honor. Why not? Kim did not answer. Caprio glanced at the monitor. Body camera timestamp, 7 hours, 18 minutes, 4 seconds p.m. Deputy shouting while Marisol is signing. He turned to the clerk. Are there any ADA-related documents in this file? Miss Ray opened a binder and read, Yes, Your Honor. Miss Sue submitted an ASL accommodation request 2 months earlier after receiving a parking citation. The form was filed with the clerk's office, traffic division, and the prosecutor's office. It included her contact information, her interpreter's contact information, and a request that all future interactions include ASL access. Caprio's expression hardened. So the system knew. The system was notified, and the system ignored it. Miss Curry continued. There are also 3 emails from the interpreter's agency requesting confirmation that an interpreter would be provided for any court appearances or law enforcement encounters. None of those emails were answered. Caprio leaned back. None were answered. Miss Curry flipped another page. There is also a recorded voicemail from the jail supervisor to the interpreter's agency, left at 11:03 p.m. on November 3rd. It states, we don't pay for interpreters at night. She can write notes instead. The courtroom went cold. Caprio's voice was calm. Clinical civil rights are not luxury items. They are not budget dependent. He turned to the prosecutor. Does your office have a position on this? The prosecutor stood, uncertain. Your Honor, the department is reviewing the procedures. Reviewing? Caprio interrupted. A woman was arrested for being deaf. A translator was arrested for translating. And the department is reviewing procedures. He leaned forward. If access is a right, it is not optional. Subscribe to Judge Caprio. ADA summary. Interpreters must be provided before questioning. The courtroom doors opened again. Lara West entered, escorted by Officer Roberto. She looked exhausted. Her clothes were wrinkled from a night in custody, but her posture was steady and professional. Caprio stood. It was the first time anyone in the courtroom had seen him rise during the session. Miss West, on behalf of this court, what was done to you was wrong. What was done to Miss Sue was wrong. And I will make sure it does not happen again. Lara's eyes filled. She nodded. Caprio gestured to the witness stand. Please. I need you to interpret, and I need to hear what happened. Lara stepped forward. The clerk swore her in. She looked at Marisol and signed. Marisol's face softened with relief. Her hands moved rapidly. Urgently, Lara interpreted. She's asking what's happening. She's asking if she's going to jail. She's asking why no one would talk to her. Caprio's voice was gentle. Tell her she is not going to jail. Tell her I will make sure she understands everything from this moment forward. Lara signed. Marisol's shoulders eased slightly. Caprio turned back to Lara. Miss West, tell the court what happened on November 3 RD. Lara's voice was firm. I received a call from a witness who said a deaf woman was being detained by police and could not communicate. I drove to the scene. When I arrived, Officer Kim was yelling at Miss Sue. She was signing that she was deaf. She was reaching for a laminated card in her dashboard that explained her condition. He thought she was reaching for a weapon. She stopped. I approached. I identified myself as a licensed ASL interpreter. I told him she was deaf and could not hear his commands. He ordered me to step back. I explained she needed an interpreter to understand what was happening. He said I was interfering. I said the ADA requires an interpreter. He told me if I didn't move back, I would be arrested. I said I couldn't move back because she had no way to communicate. Her voice cracked slightly. So he arrested me. Caprio turned slowly and looked at Officer Kim. Is that accurate? Kim nodded. Yes, Your Honor. And what did you say to Miss West when she told you about the ADA? Kim hesitated. I said her signing was making the situation worse. The room locked up. 0.5 seconds passed, then 7. That was the length of time it took for the meaning of that statement to echo through the courtroom. When Caprio finally spoke, his voice was lower than before. American Sign Language is not interference. It is communication. Timestamp, 10 hours, 13 minutes, 48 seconds. A bench acknowledgement of systemic failure. Caprio opened the file again. He read silently. Then he spoke. Here is what the evidence shows. Miss Sue is profoundly deaf. She filed an ADA accommodation request 2 months earlier. The system ignored it. She was stopped for a minor traffic violation. She could not hear the officer's commands. She attempted to communicate using sign language and by reaching for an identification card. The officer interpreted her actions as defiance. A translator arrived to provide legally required access. The translator was arrested for providing that access. Miss Sue spent the night in custody without any means of communication. The jail refused to provide a translator because it was after hours. He closed the file. Every one of those actions violated the Americans with Disabilities Act. Every one of them violated Miss Sue's civil rights, and every one of them is unacceptable. He looked at Marisol as Lara interpreted his words. Miss Sue, all charges against you are dismissed. Your arrest record will be expunged. You will receive a formal apology from this court. And from the Providence Police Department you will be reimbursed for interpreter services that should have been provided at the time of your stop and during your detention. Marisol signed again. Lara translated. She's asking if she did something wrong. Caprio's voice softened. Tell her no. Tell her the system failed her. And tell her I will make sure it does not fail anyone else. He turned to Officer Kim. Officer, you will complete 40 hours of ADA compliance training, you will submit a written report on disability rights and law enforcement, and you will personally apologize to Miss Sue and Miss West. Kim nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Caprio faced the prosecutor. Your office will review the obstruction charge against Miss West. I expect it to be dismissed within 24 hours. She will also be compensated for her unlawful detention. He turned to the clerk. Effective immediately, this court orders the following. First, a 24-hour ASL interpreter hotline will be established for all law enforcement encounters. Second, every officer in the Providence Police Department will complete mandatory disability awareness training within 60 days. Third, an ADA compliance officer will be assigned to all detention facilities. Fourth, all ADA accommodation requests filed with this court will be flagged and verified within 48 hours. Failure noted, failure corrected, failure recorded into policy. Caprio leaned forward. Disability is not defiance. Silence is not resistance. It may simply be a language you never learned. He paused. Miss Curry, prepare a full report. I want it sent to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. They need to know what happened here and how it is being fixed. Yes, Your Honor. Caprio turned back to Lara. Miss West, thank you for standing up for Miss Sue. You upheld the law when others ignored it. That took courage, and it cost you a night in jail. I am sorry for that. This court is grateful. Lara signed to Marisol. Marisol signed back. Lara spoke quietly. She says thank you. She says she thought no one would listen. Caprio looked at Marisol. Tell her I listened. Tell her this court listened. And from now on, the system will listen too. Should all police departments require disability training? Tell us below. Notice issued effective immediately. All court materials will include ADA assistance guides in ASL video format. The session was nearly over when Caprio raised his hand. Miss West, I have one final request. Lara looked up. I'd like you to teach me 2 signs. I want to say something directly to Miss Sue. The courtroom went silent. Lara stepped down and demonstrated the movements. Caprio watched closely. He tried once, then again, then nodded. He faced Marisol and raised his hands, slowly. Carefully. I'm sorry. Marisol's eyes filled with tears. Caprio signed again. Thank you. Marisol responded without words. She placed her hand over her heart and bowed her head. Lara whispered, she says you gave her her voice back. Caprio shook his head. No. She always had a voice. We just weren't listening. Justice spoke in silence. Caprio addressed the gallery. If you believe justice must be accessible to everyone, subscribe to Judge Caprio. 3 weeks later, the Providence Police Department launched disability rights training. Every officer completed it. Officer Kim finished first. His final paper was titled, The Language I Didn't Understand. The ASL hotline received 32 calls in its first month. 32 people who might have been arrested for non-compliance were instead given access. Lara West's charge was dismissed with prejudice. She received full compensation and a formal apology. Marisol Sue's record was cleared. She received a personal apology from the police chief and a call from the mayor thanking her for exposing systemic failure. Court ADA request forms were redesigned. They became available in ASL video, large print, braille, and 50 languages. Each submission triggered immediate confirmation and follow-up. The Department of Justice reviewed Caprio's ruling. It became a national reference case for ADA compliance in local courts. On Judge Caprio's desk sits a handwritten note. Silence is not defiance. It may be a language you never learned. And behind the bench, visible to everyone who enters the courtroom, hangs a small framed message in American Sign Language: justice for all. For educational and awareness purposes only.